again, tying up some loose ends before we let you get on your way. Senator Harris mentioned, as did others, that they would like to see us working on COVID relief. Again, I want to remind my colleagues they had the opportunity to vote on this a couple of weeks back, and if Senator Harris chooses to come in next week, she's going to have the opportunity to vote on COVID relief once again. She mentioned the California fires, and in relation to her comments to you about climate change, I would just remind my friend Senator Harris that it is pointed out regularly that these fires occur every year. Some years are more difficult than others, and we just grieve the loss of property and life and livelihood for Californians, but we also note that California state officials have not been successful in getting their forest management plans under control. So we would note those things. Judge Barrett, I think it is no secret that the Democrats are trying to drum up a lot of hysteria about you to spread some fear and misinformation. And much of this is centered on Americans' health care. And here's the reality. Our friends across the dais here are wanting to do a single-payer government-run system. And they fear that a constitutional court would block them from taking control of health care, from taking private health insurance away from 153 million Americans. And they have centered this entire attack talking about the ACA or Obamacare. And as I said yesterday, there are 8.3 million Americans in the Obamacare program. And in addition to the 153 million that have private health insurance, there are 57 million senior Americans that have been paying in to Medicare all their working life, and they would lose that with a government-run single-payer system. And I feel like that our friends across the dais have really tried to paint you as a monster with an agenda. And I have appreciated that you have said repeatedly, I have no agenda. And we know that, as I said, they've got their goals. They have their goal on health care, for socialized medicine, for ending the doctor-patient relationship, for making a bureaucrat-patient relationship. They've even said pre-existing condition coverage would go away, which is not true. That is widely supported by Republicans and Democrats. It actually originated with Democrats in the Senate and Republicans in the House. And they've also said older children would lose their health care. Not true. Again, that has bipartisan support. But I think what has struck me the most through some of these comments is that they say that you have to have diversity in order to have equality. But what I have watched them do through this entire process of questions and talking with you and opening statements is they have chosen intellectual isolation as opposed to having diversity bring a different perspective. And to me, that is really very sad. And to my friends across the aisle, I would say that the American people are no more afraid of the ideas of a Catholic woman than they are of the words splattered on a protest poster being held by a liberal woman. They don't fear that. I've also found a few things said about you to be unnecessarily condescending, and I regret that. I know that some on the left think they can verbally pound you into submission to a more leftist agenda. I found it very curious that one of our colleagues even said that they fear you would usher in conservative activism on the courts. But one of the things that those of us on our side of the aisle continue to say, we don't want activist judges from either the left or the right. So my colleagues should be comforted in the fact we don't want judicial activism, period, end of sentence. We want jurists that are going to call balls and strikes, that are constitutionalists, textualists, originalists. That is important to us. And some of my colleagues on the other side of the dais have seemed to be quite amazed that you could balance career and family. And I would think that they would choose to praise you for finding a way to do the work that you feel called to do and balancing it all. Maybe they should be curious about how you meet the demands of family and work and friends and church and all the different balls. I know when my kids were small, I felt like I was juggling balls coming and going. And now that I have grandkids, I feel about that same way sometime. And they have been almost, unfortunately, have this tone of condescension around that there would be a woman from the political right who would try to have it all. And as I tell my daughter regularly, you can have it all, just not at the same time. Things have to get spaced out, and you take these tasks as they come. And we see that what they have done is to continue to project their thoughts, their desires, their concerns onto the American people, using words about malicious, fear, terrified, scared. The American people are not afraid of you. They wanted to lecture you. I found it condescending the way they accused you of not understanding recusal rules. I appreciated that you were quite able to defend yourself on that point. When my team and I were talking about this, I told them, yesterday I sat here, now Senator Kennedy talked to you about a Louisiana author. I thought about a Nashville songwriter. In Nashville, we say everything begins with a song, begins and ends with a song. Now, one of my old neighbors, the late, great Eddie Arnold, had this song that was a great song. It was a love song, but the title of that is very applicable here. The song was called You Don't Know Me. And in one of our visits one day, I asked him about the story behind the song, which many times is more interesting than the lyrics themselves. And he said the story behind the song, what he had shared with the songwriter who wrote it, was that many times we miss the richness of a relationship because we don't stop and take the time to get to know someone. And that, I think, is what my colleagues did to you. They made this all about the Affordable Care Act. They made it all about issues that they wanted to talk about because we are 20 days away from an election. And what they did was, in the projection that they did, projecting their thoughts onto the American people, they projected stereotypes onto you. Those stereotypes are what they think about us as women on the political right. and they enjoy being able to mock and to ridicule and to diminish and to demean. To them, it is political sport. It is the politics of personal destruction, and it is wrong. It is wrong. I think one of the things that really gets them is this: you don't fit into their elitist format. You're a girl from the South, from New Orleans. You went to school at Rhodes in Memphis. I don't know if my colleagues have ever been to Memphis or ever been to Rhodes, which is a wonderful school. But you don't fit into their Harvard Ivy League type group. You're not a part of the clique or the club. So you left Rhodes, you go to Notre Dame, and people look at you and say, exceptional. She is doing great work. We're going to help her to get to a different spot in her career. And they did. They opened doors. You came to DC. You clerked. But, Judge, you messed up. You went back to Notre Dame. And you chose to teach and to have a family and to have friends and a sense of community right there in the middle of the heartland. And see, now they don't want to admit you got where you got. You earned it. Nobody gave you a shortcut. You earned it. And that is why we are so honored to support you. Thank you.
I'd like to associate myself with